What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. I am also CEO of the Off the Ball Network, and this show is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek, your number one place for all your ticket needs. Make sure to head on over to SeatGeek.com. Use the promo code Off the Ball Network, all caps, to get $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com. We got a college basketball, we got conference tournaments going on. So if you want to, you want to take your lady to an opera, a play, whatever, comedy show, go make sure to go on over to SeatGeek.com and use promo code Off the Ball Network, all caps, to get $20 off your first purchase. But we got a great show for you guys today. We got his second time on the show. His second time on the show. It's been a minute, and that's my fault. I should have had him back on, but happy to have him on. We got my guy Bryce. You find him on Twitter, Motor City Hoops. He's also the co-host of Piston Pulse and a contributor to Detroit Bad Boys and Draft Digest. Bryce, my guy, what's going on, bro?
What's up, Chris, man? It's been a minute, but it hasn't been a minute since you and I have connected. We're always talking. We're going back and forth. So I want to make sure the listeners know it's not like I came on, we haven't spoke or, whatever. We're always in contact. You're doing big things. I'm trying to, raise the game and do what I can do. And so I'm just glad that we officially get on here, talk some hoops, Pistons, Knicks, whatever we get into, man, I'm for it.
Yes. Yeah. We always talk it on Twitter and all that and all that good stuff. And last time we had Bryce on the show, we kind of got into his basketball career and all that, going from JUCO, to the D1 level and all that. And, I went JUCO. I didn't play, but I understood the JUCO life. I know the JUCO life, I was
different.
around it. It's a different life, man. And if you want to go back and listen to that, please go back and listen to that, because that was a good one. We talked a lot about Bryce's hoop career and all that, everything. But Bryce, we're going to get into it. We're going to get into the Detroit Pistons today.
We got to talk Pistons.
We got to talk Pistons because there's a lot going on with your Pistons. A lot going on. Obviously, the season did not go the way, as many fans expected and all that. It's a tough year. Bottom of the standings. I think the worst record overall in the league.
Right now, yeah.
Worst record overall in the league. Obviously, Cade's out. He got hurt early on and all that. But some good young promising pieces on this Detroit team. So not all bad. And we all know there's a guy from France. There's a guy from the G League that we haven't heard about. We rarely hear about these guys, that could possibly be the savior of the team. But first, let's just talk about the Detroit Pistons season so far. Like I said, it's been a rough year. It's been a rough year for Detroit. But so where do you think? I know Cade is probably the biggest thing, right? The injury probably, that really. But what, in your opinion, other than the Cade injury, what do you feel like just went down south for this team?
So, Chris, I think one thing is expectations were too high to begin with, in my opinion. So it's one of those things. They draft Cade. They bring in Boyan, Burks, like these, some of these Knicks guys. Like Nerlens Noel didn't even end up playing for this team. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so expectations were too high, I think, for the fan base, but also I would listen to national media and it'd be like, hey, the Knicks are kind of they wouldn't predict them in the play-in, but they'd be like, if there's a team that is sneaky, it might be the Pistons. It might be the Pistons. I'm like, I don't think so, man. They're not there. And then, and maybe people would have been right, Chris. Maybe they would have. But at the end of the day, when Cade went down, everything about this season changed. The whole everything, because he is the face of the franchise right now. He's the best player. And now everybody's in a role higher than what they need to be and all of that. So it went downhill right away. He only played 12 games for those who, I don't blame you for not following the Pistons that close. I'm sure Cade's been out, but 12 games is all he played, man. You take SGA off the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, I don't know what the record is when he doesn't play, but are you telling me they're where they are if SGA doesn't play? Like all these different dudes. And I'm not saying Cade's at the same level, but take the best player off any team and the season's going to change.
Of course. Yeah, no. And once you saw him out, it was like, okay, they're going to embrace the tank, essentially, and it definitely happened once he was out. But give me some positives from this season. Obviously, there's not, you see the record and 51 losses, bottom of the, there's not a lot to take up. But you watch this team, you're in deep with this team and all that. So what are the positives from this season, with this team?
Yeah, so it's all individual based, Chris. Is what Jaden Ivey has been better. I was high on Jaden.
Me too. I had him top 4.
I think he's been better than almost what anybody could have expected. People that were low on him have to be impressed with what he's done. 100%. And even people that were high on him, I think are impressed with what he's done is what's crazy, because he's played with more nuance than what anybody thought. He's played in the mid-range, better than anybody thought. He's passed better than what anybody thought. He shot the 3, even though it's like 33%, it's still better than what anybody thought, Chris. Yeah. So that's been a positive. Jalen Duren, I think we need to slow a little bit about how good he's been, because there are some growing pains still, but he's the youngest player in the league. He's been a major
Knicks fans are still mad.
I know.
He was a Knick for like a half a minute.
It's funny to me because I don't even think about it. And then, so I'll tweet out something about Jalen Duren, Chris, and it'll blow up. And I'll be like, why is my tweet blowing up? And all of a sudden it's because Knicks fans are quote tweeting it and retweeting it. I'm like, oh, shoot.
Every time Mitchell Robinson has less than 10 rebounds or 2 points and he's fouling out, and, Jalen Duren starts trending.
So I will say this, that young man can rebound. He's one of the best offensive rebounders in the league already. Defensively, he's got some work to do. But again, positives, individual play, he's been really good. I would say those are the 2 biggest things. We've seen Isaiah Stewart start to transition into this 4-man role. Killian Hayes went through a stretch, like he had a 2-month stretch where it's like, okay, maybe that's regressed a little bit, but at least we saw that, like that's something. Obviously, Sadiq Bey got traded. Marvin Bagley III's looked good since he returned. Like, there's just all these little individual players where it's like, okay, we have no idea how it's going to fit together, but there's some excitement around them individually.
Yeah. Bagley has definitely played a little bit better of late, and I still have some Bagley stock. Still a little bit left with the Bagley stuff. But also a big trade you guys made was getting James Wiseman.
Yeah.
From the Warriors and all that. And how have you seen him? Obviously it was a bit of a tough go for him in Golden State, because when they took him with the second pick, it made sense, right? Because everyone hindsight's 2020, like, oh, they should have took LaMelo. It's like, well, we weren't thinking about that because they still had Steph, Clay, Klay Thompson and all that. So it's like, all right, that didn't make sense at the time. It made sense to take a athletic young big, and put him into this team and have him grow with Draymond and all that. He had a lot of good people too, but it obviously didn't go the way, they wanted it to go. And they wound up, injuries too, big part of Wiseman's, tough stretch in the Warriors, but he goes, you guys pick, it feels like every young guy that maybe people are doubting, or like Bagley, and like you just got RJ Hampton too and all that, all these young guys, they go to Detroit to try to get, back their stock and all that. But how did you feel about the Wiseman move? Because like I said, you got some guys like Bagley, Stewart and all that. You got some Duren too. So that people were like, wait, you guys have Duren and all that. Why pick up Wiseman and all that? So how did you feel about the Wiseman move when they made it?
Yeah, I mean, he did it with Josh Jackson as well. And when I say he, I'm talking about GM Troy Weaver for the Pistons. I'm cool with it. This is what a team where the Pistons are. This is what they should be doing. Now, the fit is weird. I think that was a lot of stuff. A lot of the backlash or reason that Pistons fans didn't like it was because, well, they have Duren. They have Bagley. What are they going to now do with James Wiseman? The interesting thing with Wiseman, this is crazy, a crazy stat, Chris. And this may have changed because Duren hasn't been playing. When the trade happened, Chris, Jalen Duren had played more minutes in his NBA career than James Wiseman had. Rookie Jalen Duren had played more minutes than third-year player James Wiseman. So my argument for James Wiseman, Chris, is we don't know. I had people telling me he's a bust. He can't play. I was like, he hasn't played enough minutes for us to know that. He's played 1,000 minutes in his career, Chris. You can't tell me with 100% certainty that this guy isn't some sort of player in the league. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying he can be a 4-man. I'm not saying he can play next to Jalen Duren and be, the Pistons version of the Cavs. I'm not saying that. I'm telling you, the kid still has potential. And what was really crazy, I had multiple Warriors fans and podcasters and content creators reach out and like, the Warriors didn't give him a chance. The Warriors didn't treat him right. And that's crazy to say about the Golden State Warriors.
I agree.
But it was what it sounded like. The Wiseman was taking time, and the vets, Steph Curry, Draymond, were impatient. And at the end of the day, I don't blame those dudes. Like, their careers are almost over. We got to go win. And so I think he needs a chance, and that's what he's getting.
Yeah. I think, and I had a conversation with this with someone, is like, you know, I think the timeline, them winning a championship kind of turned it, because when they got the second pick and all that, obviously they had all the injuries and all that, so they had the bad year and all that. But I think a lot of people, looked like maybe the Warriors are going to go back to middle of the pack and all that. But that championship kind of excelled. They're like, no, Steph wants more, Draymond wants more and all that. So they just didn't fit the timeline. We thought the timeline would be, they might be going back to the youth movement, but it didn't fit. And then when all the injuries of Wiseman and all that, it just is like, hey, we got to win now, man. We're not focused on your development.
Yeah.
You know, they just weren't. So it made sense for them to try to get him home. But I never gave up on him. Like, you see too many, and I feel like in today's era, we give up on guys way too quick. We give up on, like, rookies we're talking about, we're giving up on them. And like Wiseman, I was like, big guys take a little bit of time to develop and all that. And he, like I said, he only played 3 games at Memphis and all that. So he just hasn't played a lot of basketball and all that. So we need to see him healthy and ramped up, and then we can get a better evaluation of James Wiseman. Like, we can't just judge him off like you said, we got Duren playing more minutes than Wiseman's had in his whole career so far. So we just had to give him time and just an opportunity to play, because with the Warriors, especially this year, there's a lot of DMPs and all that, and it was like writing on the wall. I was like, yeah, they're gonna find a way to trade him, because they're in win now mode.
Yeah, and so I think anytime we have a team where like, they need to be building for the future at the same time they're trying to win, we saw the Warriors try to do that, and it didn't work out so well. So, every time we critique a team for not trying to do that, it's like, is that even possible? Can you be going both ways? Can you be winning and building for the future at the same time? Like, that's tough to do. The other thing is Wiseman, obviously has a lot of positives. One critique is his basketball kind of IQ and awareness, Chris.
Yeah.
And is there a more basketball IQ team than the freaking Golden State Warriors? Like, that's what Steph, Draymond, Clay, Kevon Mooney, I know Iggy's not there, playing right now, but Iggy, like, that's what they are, Chris.
Yeah.
And so it was hard for Wiseman to succeed with them offensively, because it's all about like seeing the play 3 steps ahead. And that's not really what Wiseman does. He needs to just get out and transition, catch, and finish. I wish he would stop posting up for quite as long. But my point is, I don't think it was a very good fit the more you look into it. And again, I'm just glad as a basketball fan, and as you, like, let's just see what the kid has. Let's give him a chance to make mistakes, have a bad game, and then come back and get 25 minutes the next night still.
Yeah. No, I agree. And like I said, it just didn't fit. It just didn't fit in Golden State and all that, especially with how they move. That offense moves. And if you're not with it, Bryce, you're not with it with them. That's why. And people just look like, oh, man, how could he beat out Kevon Looney? And I don't even look at it that way. Just like Kevon Looney does the little stuff.
Yes.
That's still what Wiseman has to figure. Because Wiseman, if we're just going to pick off, just based off straight talent and on a pickup, you're taking Wiseman 100% of the time, but there's more to it. There's the little things that he's not yet figured out, which I hope he does, and I think he can. But it's the little things Looney does, the screens and all that, and boxing out that Wiseman still has to figure out.
I love that you brought that up, because I think sometimes when we think about the NBA, we just think about top end talent. Who has the most? How can such and such player who's scoring 30 points a game in college basketball with all this talent? How come the guy that's averaging 12 points a game gets drafted above him? Well, the guy that's averaging 12 knows his role. He's going to knock down catch and shoot corner threes. He's going to cut off the ball. He's going to keep floor spacing. He's going to guard his butt off. He's going to understand the defensive scheme. And the guy that drops 30, well, all he can do is drop 30. We already got guys that can drop 30. We don't need you to drop 30, Chris.
Exactly.
We need, let's say like Bryce, go set screens, get a rebound, do those. And so that's the nuance of NBA draft, talent acquisition, roster construction, free agency, that sometimes even me, maybe you, like, we overlook sometimes because we're just thinking top end talent. Well, that top end talent may not have a role with that team or in the NBA in general.
Dude, exactly. We see it. How many times have we seen it? Guys averaging 25 in college and they'll go second round and all that. But the guy, like you just mentioned, the guy's averaging 11 to 13 points, is getting lottery buzz or attention. So it just the fits. It's sometimes it's hard to explain. It's hard to explain because it doesn't make sense at times, right? You see certain players, you're like, how is that guy in the league, but this guy is over here and overseas? Like it doesn't make sense sometimes, but it's just how the league is. It's about roles, and certain guys fit roles and all that. Like, and it's just how it works.
Amani Bates is the name in this class, Chris. I've been having this conversation the last couple of days with people. Like, what's Amani gonna? I don't know, because I don't know if here's the thing with Amani. I don't know if Amani is willing to just be a catch and shoot guy. If he is, I mean, he's 6'9" and can shoot it. So there's a role for that. But if Amani is wired, and there's nothing wrong with this, but if Amani is wired to, I'm taking the volume shots, I have the ball in my hands, I'm doing those things, I have the most green of green lights, that's a hard mindset to change, Chris.
Exactly.
That's not easy. And so he's the one that immediately sticks out to me of ultra productive. I know it was on a bad team, but the dude still got buckets. Give him his respect for getting buckets. But I don't know. It'll be interesting.
It definitely, and we could definitely talk about Amani a little bit later because he's definitely one of the big, one of the big draft mysteries because the range is so wide where you can go.
Yeah.
Wide. But speaking of draft and all that, but first, before we get into that, how are we feeling about Dwayne Casey? Do you think he is going to be the head coach next season? I know a lot of Pistons fans are just like, let's just get rid of him. Like, he's that old school type of coach, and we're trying to weed them out. We want one of these. I'm sure there are a lot of fans that talk to you like, we want one of these new 29-year-old coaches that they want one of those guys. So, how we feel about Dwayne, and is there any possibility that he will be, coaching his team next year?
Yeah, I'm not a Dwayne hater, or I don't even know if they're haters. Like, they truly think that Dwayne is holding this team back. So I don't think they're hating. Like, I think that's truly how they feel. Mm-hmm. I've always felt the same way about Dwayne. There's critiques, Chris. The defense isn't good. But my thing is, by all accounts, he doesn't run the defense. One of the assistants runs the defense.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always told fans, like, if you want to be mad at somebody about the defense, then you should be mad at Jerome Allen or Rex Kalamian, because those are the guys running the defense, or Troy Weaver for not bringing in better defensive players.
Exactly, yeah.
But offensively, my biggest knock is I wish they would be a little more creative. There's not as much creativity as what I would like. And so that's my biggest knock on Coach Casey a lot of times. Here's the thing, though. At the end of the day, I think he's been a positive for this team. And here's why. How much stuff have you seen come out of the Detroit Pistons organization over the last 3 years? This team has lost and lost and lost and lost. How much locker room stuff comes out?
No.
How much player altercations? How much player coach altercations? How much compare it to the Houston Rockets?
Oh, Bryce, that's like a whole day's worth. Like, they give me headaches, man. Like, I always say, and then I talk a lot. I was like, if there's a team I'm not rooting for to get the top 2 pick, it's Houston. I hate to say it, I just don't. You don't want those guys to go there. Like, I root for these young guys to that, but I'm like, don't go to Houston, because I see how they did with Jabari. Like, it feels like, fans have turned on him. Rockets fans, I'm like, no, don't. I don't need Scoot or Victor there. Like, go to San Antonio, go to Detroit. It's crazy. Like, and that's I'm glad you brought that up. It's like both teams really bad. Houston, Detroit. We don't hear a lot of stuff going on in Detroit, and every day is like, whoa. The poor Silas, Coach Silas, he's losing his hair. He's gonna get fired. It's not, and just a bad job. Like, he thought he was gonna have James Harden and all this. Like, I got James Harden and all this, and now like, whoa. He's going where? He's going to Brooklyn, and it's just been downhill since. And it feels like every day you hear something about Houston. But like you said, that's a good point you brought up.
And in fairness, Dwayne Casey didn't sign up for a rebuild either.
No, he's a winner. I mean, coach of the year in Toronto, like the Eastern Conference Finals and all that. Like, he did. I'm sure this is not what he expected.
And everybody I talk to, Chris, says there's nobody respected more in the league than Dwayne Casey. So here's my ultimate, and I don't mean to bash on the Rockets. It's the right example.
No, you're right though.
It's the right example for my point. But what I think Coach Casey has done a good job of is he's turned these young kids into pros. And at the end of the day, that's all I care about right now. That Jaden Ivey is learning how to live the NBA life the right way. Jalen Duren is learning how to live the NBA life the right way. Off the court, on the court, practice, all of those things. And listen, I don't want to take anything away from those guys. By all accounts, Jaden Ivey is a self-motivated worker who is the last person to leave practice every day. That's not a coaching thing. That's a Jaden Ivey thing as well. But I just feel like he's done a good job of like keeping the wheels on while they only win 15 games. And while the fan base hates his guts, like as much as we know these people hear this, they hear this stuff. And he's a constant professional in every media appearance, every interview, everything he does. And I respect the hell out of him for that. And I don't know if he'll be the head coach next year, Chris, but I think he will be a part of this organization in some capacity for years to come. That's my prediction.
No. And I'm sure, I'm a Knicks fan. So my team is in the fourth, fifth seed right now. And my coach hears it, and we're a playoff team, so I know how that feels, hearing, I'm sure it's tough, for Dwayne to hear, to deal with the losing and then the fan reaction. Like I said, I'm sure Tibbs goes through this and he's winning. He's probably like, and we're winning games and all that. But, I definitely get that with Dwayne, and we'll see what happens. But like you said, yes, it's bad. It's been bad, but like he's keeping, like you said, keeping those players afloat and all that. And like you said, teaching them the game of basketball, regardless win-loss, he's teaching them how to be pros and all that. And we're seeing, that's why some people are so high on Ivy and Duren. Like, so you guys had a really good draft and all that. So speaking of drafts.
Hold on. Real quick, shout out Julius Randle, man. Like
I call him Hoopius. I
don't know why. I've always had a soft spot for Julius and liked his game and all that. Like he had the breakout year, then the rough year, and he's hooping, man. Like, obviously Brunson, like they made the move. It's paying off. Brunson's having a year. You guys are winning. And now you got my guy, Josh Hart. Pistons fans don't like Josh Hart because he said some rude things about Detroit, which I don't like, because even though I don't live in Detroit, I protect Detroit, and I don't like when people bash the city of Detroit, because every time I've been there, it's been beautiful. But I like Josh Hart, the basketball player, and how he gets stuff done on the floor. So I wanted to shout out your squad because they've been hooping, and Julius deserves some love, man.
No, he does. A lot of people, especially last year, soured on Julius. They wanted him gone and all that, and they wanted to see more Obi Toppin and all that, because obviously Obi's been affected with Julius's rise. We took him top 10.
Yeah.
So then the expectations were he's going to be, he was a ready now player, and Julius kind of stopped that, and which is a good play, especially that COVID year and all that. And then, last year wasn't so great. Then we come back and this year he's an all NBA type of player. And like the Brunson addition just makes his game so much easier, because he's not forcing as much on double teams and all that. And he's just playing more fluid and all that. He could trust his game and all that. So it's been fun. Bryce, it really has been, playoff team and all that potentially, top 4 seed maybe. We had a stinker in Charlotte, but, it happens. You're going, 9 in a row, and then, you just run out of gas, and it happened with Charlotte. But it's been fun. It's really been fun, and some of these young guys have developed too solid too. So it's been fun. It's been fun to the playoffs, and then it's a whole different animal, and then whatever happens there. But it's been fun. But
love it.
We just talked about the draft you guys had last year. This potentially, we all know it's Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson, right? Those are the two, like, crystal balls. Like, those are the two. That is the class of this draft. There's other good players, but those are the two guys. And obviously you guys are in position, the top 3 teams get the, 12%, 14%, 14% chance, even, but you got to be in that top 3 to get a chance. So I'm going to ask you this. Life with Victor Wembanyama on the Detroit Pistons looks like?
A lot of fun, Chris. It looks like a lot of fun, and it's funny because I hate to be content creator person, but obviously we do a podcast, and we look at our podcast numbers, and when the Pistons aren't winning, like going through a season like this, our podcast numbers tend to dip because interest tends to dip, and we talk a lot. It's like, man, if they land the number 1 pick, our numbers are going to skyrocket. Because here's the thing, Victor is the type of prospect. Not only are Pistons fans tuning into Pistons podcasts, every fan of the NBA and basketball in general is turning into Pistons podcasts. And it's funny, I know the year that they got the number 1 pick and Cade, I got asked on probably more podcasts than I ever have. And because it was like, hey, the Pistons have the number 1 pick. So so as a content creator, it makes your life a lot easier because you can write Victor articles all day long.
Every day. And people are going to click. They're going to click.
Yep. I was thinking about this shit. Adding Victor, I think, solidifies the young core. Like, it's locked in. You have the dudes you need, no questions asked. Hopefully health is there for all of these guys. And I want to say that about Cade too. For everybody who questions Cade's production, this is an injury that has been lingering for Cade for a while and may have affected his play, not just this year, but even going back to his rookie year. So just consider that when you look at Cade Cunningham's rookie numbers and he was dealing with shin splints. Just shin splints. Just think about that. Cade, Ivy, Victor, Duren essentially is like, hey, just go be a rim runner, rebounder. Like, he can do that. We know that. Fill out the roster around it. It solidifies the young core, and then it's just about building those guys up and surrounding them with some tertiary pieces.
I just think if you have a healthy Cade and you have Victor and you got Ivy and you got all these, these rim running bigs with Wiseman and Duren, you can't tell me Cade's not getting 9 assists a game without even trying. He might just get that just waking up. And like you said, that's going to create a buzz in Detroit that you guys haven't had for a little bit. You had, obviously you got Cade and you get Ivy, Duren. You add Victor to that. It just, and a lot of people I think I like Scoot better. I was like, yeah, Scoot might be. It kind of reminds me of Zion Ja. It kind of reminds me of that. It's like, Ja, you could have made a case for Ja to be number 1 pick, but to me, financially, as a business, there's not a chance you can't. As a GM, I can go down if Victor is a bust. Let's say he's a bust. I can live with that, taking him with the number 1 pick, because I'm like, well, I had to. you kind of had to. It just financially, they've talked about whoever takes Victor, they're going to make an extra whatever amount because jersey sales, the season tickets are going to go through the roof. Same thing we saw with Zion, season tickets through the roof. Everything it's going to be a massive expense. It's going to be huge financially for Detroit, and that's just going to help the whole city as a whole if they get Victor there. So
Victor will be on buildings in Detroit like that. It's not even close to me, Chris. And listen, I love Scoot. I think Scoot is big time. And I don't even have him in the same tier, even as players. Victor Wembanyama is a generational prospect. I'm not saying he's a generational player because we haven't seen it.
We've seen a player.
He is a generational because, Chris, he is freaking 7'5", and he can shoot and dribble and move and pass and play on the perimeter. And then he can go block shots and defend and do everything else you need him to do. I think we just talked about the city of Detroit, right? And I very much have come to love the city of Detroit and its people and protective of how people look at it. It's a city on the up. It's coming up. It's back on the rise. No. And I had someone ask me this question: how can a team's success, sports team success, help a city? This is the perfect example. Victor coming to Detroit would help the financial situation of the city of Detroit, and just the boom and the buzz and the influx of people. It would not only be great for the organization, not only be great for Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, it would be great for the city of Detroit. And for those reasons, I hope it happens.
Yep. It's just like when LeBron went to Cleveland.
Yes.
We saw the boost. And then when he left, we saw how a lot of things went down and all that. So this is, to me, I don't, no, Scoot's great. Scoot's great, and we're about to talk about him. But there's not a chance whoever has number one pick that you don't even think about it. It's like you have the jacket that just says when they give you the card and the number one pick Detroit, you just have we're taking it.
And here's the thing. You talked about like as a GM, you can live with it. If you draft Victor and he busts, you don't get fired because of that. No. If you draft Scoot over Victor,
you're never gonna get a job ever.
And Scoot busts and Victor becomes generational. Yeah, not only do you get fired, you may never get another job. No. And people can say, "Oh, you shouldn't make decisions." No, you should make decisions on that. I'm sorry. This is how Troy Weaver pays his bills. This is like you have to. That's the tough part of this business. Is not our business. That business is. You are making decisions based on keeping your job sometimes because that's how you make your money, man. So exactly. These guys are humans, and you are getting fired, Chris, if Scoot busts and Victor hits and you took him over him, which I don't think will happen. But
you're getting fired. You're getting tossed out the city. You can't even look at a basketball. They won't even allow you to even buy a basketball at a Dick's or whatever. No,
not allowed.
Not allowed. You can't do it. No, it's a lock. It's Victor number one. All right. Now there's a world where there's not Victor, right? And I'm sure Absolutely. Pistons fans are sweating. Scoot Henderson. Now,
this is the combo.
I'm sure that, yes, the Victor is great, but then there's Scoot, yes, and he's not a bad consolation prize, but your guy's situation is different because you got a guy in Ivy who's kind of similar to it.
Yep.
Talk to me a world, Scoot Henderson, and what the Detroit Pistons look like if they do select Scoot Henderson.
You play them together. You play all three of them together.
All three? Okay.
That's what I would do. I've been running these scenarios in my head. I was doing it last night because this is the conversation in Detroit Pistons NBA draft world, right? If you're number one, you get Victor, seamless fit.
Yeah.
If you fall out in number one to number 3, 4, 5, there's all sorts of fits that make sense. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of those guys. Number 2 is where the most conversation happens. I would start Scoot at the point because I think Scoot is, really, really, really good. I thought Jaden Ivey could play off ball anyway. So I would essentially start him at the 2, and I would slide Cade to the 3 to start games, Chris, to start games.
Okay.
And then what I would do is I would sub Cade out 6 minutes into the game, and I would let Scoot and Ivy play together for 2 or 3 minutes. And then I would sub Scoot out and let Ivy be the on-ball creator for 2 or 3 minutes without either of those guys on. And then to start the second quarter, you know what I do? I would bring on freaking Cade Cunningham to play against your second unit as the point guard and let him go to work to start second quarters. And so my point is I would just stagger those guys. I'd start the game with them. I would start the second half with them. That's 12 minutes of the game where they play together, but there would not be a single second where I didn't have one of those 3 guys on the floor running the show for my team, and I would feel pretty darn good about that. Now, the question is, Chris, when you get to the end of the game, now whose hands is the ball in?
Yeah.
And is there enough shooting, especially like if you get into a playoff situation, which, that's a couple years down the road, but you get into situations like that. Okay, is there enough shooting in that scenario?
That's going to be the big thing. Yes.
That's where it becomes kind of an issue. I think for 46 minutes out of a regular season game, I have no qualms. I don't think it's an issue at all. Those other minutes, those playoff minutes, now that's part of a bigger conversation.
Yeah, and that's going to be the big thing. Can you play all 3? And I've heard people say, in this situation, maybe you trade Ivy and all that, but like you said, I think you just rock with these 3 young guys and just let it play out and let it play out. And then at the end of the next season, maybe you'd be like, okay, we got to see it, because we just can't assume that it won't work. We have to actually see it on the court. And then you can evaluate after next season. Okay, well, all right. I think we should go forward with Scoot and Ivy or whatever the combination is.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to go about it. Let's see, do it the way you just said. I like the way how you said it, and let's see how that goes. And then at the end of the season, we can evaluate and see. Okay, yeah, we didn't have enough shooting at the end of the game. Maybe we should flip. We could flip one of these guys to get maybe a really, because any one of those 3 guys can get you a really good wing. a really good wing to get you the shooter you need possibly to fit with those. So
you're telling me you couldn't trade Jaden Ivey at the end of next year and get a high level 3-and-D wing plus something else? Why not try? I could not live in a world where I don't at least see it. That would bother me as a GM of not at least seeing it, Chris. And here's the thing. I know this is going to be the what if game. What if Cade is a 40% three-point shooter? Because he was a good three-point shooter in college, Chris. Yeah. And I just told you a little bit ago, he's been playing with the shin issue his entire NBA career. And you know what he did? He missed short a lot. Well, you know what? Why people miss short? Usually because of their legs. So if he's trying to jump through a shin injury, and what if Ivy continues to improve, Chris, and he's a 36% three-point shooter? Scoot is an incredible mid-range shooter. What if he's able? Now, I realize I'm playing the what-if game. I'm just saying I do believe there's a world where it could happen, and if it doesn't, I at least want to see it.
Yep. No, I agree. You want to see it. You want to see what happens, what you need to fix, what you need to add, and then you can make your decision after, like I said, after the season and be like, okay, maybe because like we mentioned, you can get a lot from either one of those three of those guys. If you're not feeling one of them, guess what? There's a team that's going to be like, well, that's a franchise guy. We need that one of those guys, and we could flip them. So I think you're in a good position. We'll go, all right. Who do you like if it isn't Victor and it isn't Scoot? Give me some guys that you like. Let's say you guys fall to 3, 4, 5 in that range. Who are some guys that you like that could fit this team? Because I know there's a few guys that could fit right into this ball club.
So one thing I want to say real quick, if they don't think that Scoot can fit, Chris, I don't think you take any of these guys at number 2. So my point being is, if you don't think Ivy and Scoot to play together, then I think you trade Ivy, or I think you trade the number 2 pick for the number 4 pick and extra assets or whatever. Does that make sense?
No, yeah.
Some people have just been like, take Brandon Miller at number 2. No.
Dude, get some assets.
Yes. I'm not saying that there isn't a world where then you still start the season with Brandon Miller on the team. I'm saying you don't just straight up take somebody else at number 2. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think that's good asset management. Okay. Brandon Miller, and I always stop a little bit whenever it's Brandon Miller conversation because there's all this off the court stuff and it's a serious situation and all of that. And so I want to give it its due notice or
100%. I definitely agree.
But we don't have all the story yet. It's still kind of hazy and all of that. So I think both of you and I would agree, like we're just sticking to the on-court basketball stuff for right now.
Basketball, yeah.
Brandon Miller is a seamless fit for the Detroit Pistons, and that's why the fans are so intrigued. He's a 6'9" wing, like we just talked about. I don't know that the defense is like great, but 6'9" wing who gets stronger, he rebounds, and he can straight fill it up. And so there is no doubt that he may be actually the best fit out of anybody. If you said straight fit,
he really is though. He's the best.
He might be the best fit. So that would be, if they fall to 3, to me, that's almost a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, it really is. He might be a better fit than Scoot, even though Scoot might be the better prospect. But the fit is he fits in like a glove. And all that, and that's going to be something you guys are going to figure out. But are there any other guys that you feel like could be a good fit? Obviously Brandon Miller at 3, but let's say you go to 4. Are there any other guys that you're feeling that would be a good fit on this team? And there's some good wingers: Cam Whitmore, Keontae George. There's a bunch of nice wings in this draft. So who do you like?
Yeah, I'm coming around on Cam Whitmore. I wasn't super high coming out of high school. Early in his time at Villanova, I go back and forth with Cam, but I do think Cam would be a good fit because it looks like he's going to be able to shoot it, Chris. So if he's
healthy too now, he was banged up earlier. Yeah,
correct. And I think Cam could be a really good defender. Like watching his film, there's some possessions where like this man at his size is down in a stance, knees bent, straight getting after it. That Villanova team's kind of been a little bit of a. It hasn't been, it's been weird, and that's tough transitioning from Jay Wright was a legend, man. Like he was. And so I don't want to take too much away from Cam there. So I would be 1 and 2. You know how excited I would be, Chris. 3 with Brandon Miller as a basketball player. Like I would still be pretty excited about that. Cam Whitmore, I would be good. Like I would come away like, okay, this is a nice fit. I'm happy. And that's kind of how I am with these other guys. Like even the Thompson twins, there's a lot of upside. It's just scary as hell because I don't know how to evaluate those dudes.
It's tough with especially with the OTE because it's just a completely different league. They're playing against a lot of younger players,
and they're 20.
And and it's hard to evaluate because they have the athletic, especially a man. He's like his first step is just like it's crazy, but it's everything else, especially the shooting. That's always going to be the big thing with them is just shooting.
Yep.
And like I said, you guys need shooting. So, yes, the upside could be, whatever. The upside is, but you need some shooters,
That's an interesting point. I might text all my draft people, and I'd be interested to see what you think. I'm going to text them today. Whose shooting do you trust more to translate to the NBA? Scoot, Amin, or Asar? Who do you think ends up being of those three? Who's the best 3-point shooter over the first, let's say, 8 years of their career? Who has the best career 3-point percentage? Because that's the thing, right? People critique Scoot's 3-point shooting. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure Scoot's not the answer. It might be Asar. My guess is it's not Amin.
It's not Amin. It's not. Maybe Asar. Maybe because
I think that's going to be
Asar at the next level might be more on the perimeter where Scoot's going to have the ball in his hand a lot.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Amin too. So maybe
Asar probably gets more catch and shoot.
He's going to get a lot more catch and shoot opportunities than Scoot and Amin because they're going to be probably lead ball handlers most likely at the next level because they're going to go so high. So I think Asar simply based off his, where he's going to be playing
the shot diet he's going to get. So
yeah,
the one other guy, Chris, in this range, and then I don't know that I have anybody else because here's my thing: I have Keontae and Nick Smith Jr. in this tier, but because it's a tier and they're such bad fits for the Pistons, I don't think I would take them over any of these other guys. I don't think that they fit with Detroit. Because Keontae is like 6'4", and so I just. And people will say, well, you just said you could play Cade at the 3 because of Scoot's a different level of player. I'm not moving Cade to the 3 for Keontae George.
No.
But is Jarris Walker. Jarris Walker, I think, is in this tier for me. Again, he would kind of feel he could go into the 4 spot. And so that is an area where the Pistons could improve because Isaiah Stewart hasn't completely proven that he can do that yet. The straight 2 big lineup, I'm not sold on. So Jarris would have a role right away with the Pistons as well.
Yeah, he's versatile too.
Yes.
He kick it out. Yeah, he reminds me of I was just thinking about the name. He used to play for Utah. The forward. But just like a stronger version of him. Oh, it's gonna bother me that I forgot the name, but he reminds me of he was an all-star a few years and all that. Messed up. I should have wrote it down. But he's just that type of big where he's just so strong and all, but he can go outside and shoot a little bit. Like I like him a lot. But speaking of drafting on him, we got a few minutes left for you go, and I appreciate your time, Bryce, this morning.
No doubt.
Having your show, bro. It's been fun. Who are some under the radar prospects? I know you're diving into the draft scene and all that. So who are some guys, some under the radar guys that you've been liking, that you've been watching?
Let me tell you the guy who is my favorite player in the draft, and I'm not saying he's the best by any means, just my favorite, is Jordan Hawkins at Connecticut.
Oh, he's so good. He's so good.
This kid.
He gives me Quentin Grimes vibes.
Bro, he is. Yeah, because Quentin can shoot it, and then Quentin is a good defender, right? Like, I think
it's both same size, 6'4", around that.
Jordan's just got to get strong, right? Quentin is built different than Jordan. Jordan can straight shoot that thing, man. This kid, like, if you're listening, if you haven't watched Jordan Hawkins, just go watch a Connecticut game. And it's such a pretty jumper, Chris. It's effortless. And this man is in such great shape, just running off screens all over the place. And then here's where I like him. He's only flashed it, but he's got more athleticism than what people realize. Every time I talk to people about Jordan Hawkins, I'm like, go watch this game. Like I think it was the Seton Hall game. He put a dude on a poster, had another dunk. Like, he don't have to be a great wiggle guy because his shooting gravity is so good. He's going to get opportunities to attack, and then he'll get after it defensively. He's long. He's a great kid. Like he's my favorite player in the draft, just in terms of guys that I aesthetically like watching. And he may end up in the lottery, mid-first round at least.
He might, because he fits today's game perfect. And like you said, he's like a little snake going off all the screens. And all that. And the big reason why UConn's had success this season. He's averaging like 20 a game. He's been really good enough. But like I said, he gives me Quentin Grimes vibes. Like he just has that. Like I said, Quentin's a little bit more stockier, but that type of style with the shooting and all that. So who else you like? Throw me some names you like.
Yeah, so I'll give you a second round guy and a name that people like probably aren't thinking of because Grady Dick at KU is such a big name. He's got a teammate, Chris, Kevin McCullough Jr., who, for my money, and I'll admit, like, there's how many ever teams in college basketball, so I haven't watched every team as much as I've watched Kevin play, but the best defender in the country. Mm-hmm. This kid can flat out guard, and he can guard on the ball, has incredible hands. I think he's the best off-ball, like, rotator, tag the roll man, all that stuff. Now, here's the thing. People are going to go look up his stats, Chris, and he's like less than 30% from three. So he's got to get better shooting the ball. But this kid, we talked about roles earlier. You know what I'm saying? Kevin McCullough is going to be the kid that everybody's like, wait, Jalen Wilson averaged 20 a game and was first team all country. Why is Kevin McCullough getting drafted above Jalen Wilson? It's about role, Chris. Yeah. And Kevin McCullough can fill a role in the NBA day one.
And you can look at Jalen Wilson and be like, oh, yeah, he's averaging 20, but that shot selection, woo, boy.
Yeah, and what's it? Yeah, and what's his role? And I'm not trying to bash Jalen Wilson. I think he's a good player. He rebounds, but he doesn't defend near the same level as Kevin McCullough. And all the shots that Jalen Wilson is getting,
he's not getting at the level.
Thank you. Exactly.
It's crazy because like you see him at this level, and you see a lot of guys like him, who are volume shooters and all that. And it's like, okay, you're not going to, I know he's not going to be able to get that at the next level. Yep. All right. And it's like, then what is he as an NBA player then? Like, he's not Jalen Wilson college player. So what is he at the next level? Is that a player that I can trust putting in my 10-man rotation? So that's a real thing. And that's why I say it's so hard to figure out, because he's averaging 20 a game. He's an all Big 12, all American type of player. But yet, like you said, McCullough might get drafted higher because the fit that he's going to be a better fit. You could just fit him in anywhere, and he could do a bunch of things.
Yep.
So, but that's how tough it is to evaluate.
It's
right?
hard, man.
Guys, right? Like you mentioned, like guys are averaging 9 a game. It might be a lottery pick, but a guy who's averaging 25 in college, might be in the second round. It's just like it really is crazy. If you're not a fan, if you're not into it like we are, how do you make sense of that?
And even for me, it took me a little while to come around on Kevin McCullough. I've watched a ton of Kevin McCullough film, and so it took me a little while to see all the nuance. Because here's the thing: it's not just about steals and blocks on the defensive end. And listen, I respect all the metrics and the data and all of that. I think that stuff shows offensive value and does a good job, way more than I trust those metrics defensively. I just think it's so hard to quantitatively, define defensive value. There's just so much other nuance. You can't put a number to a weak side rotation where you tag the roll man and keep him from catching the pass. Like you can't put, and it's nobody's fault. Yeah. It's nobody's fault, Chris. It just is what it is. So I've watched more and more film. I've gotten higher. The shot has to get better. So don't get me wrong here. Because if he was a 38% 3-point shooter, Kevin McCullough would be a first round pick. I guarantee you, he would be a first round pick. Unfortunately, he's closer to a 28% 3-point shooter right now than 38. And that's why he's very much under the radar, and probably rightfully so, because he is going to have to knock down shots. You have to be able to do something offensively in terms of spacing the floor.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. 100% agree. And like I said, it is an inexact science, the NBA draft, but I know, you and fellow Pistons, faithful are going to be excited, this, especially once we hit that draft lottery day. It's going to be a nerve-wracking day and all that. But Bryce, my man, I appreciate you coming on the show, brother. The second time on the show, man. It won't be the last for sure. I appreciate you, man, coming on this early morning.
Yeah, no doubt. I had a blast, man. It was a great start to my day. I told you, I got up, I got a workout in, I got my coffee. I was like, I get to record with my guy, Chris. So my day is made. My day is set. Like, I'm energetic. I'm ready to go. I got my students coming in here in a minute. So I'm going to be like way too revved up for them. They're going to be looking at me like, what is wrong with you? Why are you so excited? But, I appreciate you. And just real quick, self-plug. If you guys like Pistons, the Pistons Pulse, I record with the Detroit Pistons beat writer for the Free Press, Omari Sankofa. I write over at Detroit Bad Boys. And then if you like draft content, SI Draft Digest. So we're like, we're a little bit of a little brother, whatever you want to call it, to SI.com. But Draft Digest, we got some big things going over there. Matt Badcock is joining us.
For first big time guest.
Nice.
Matt, so he's my guy forever.
Yeah, Matt is the best. We're adding a subscription thing over there. Him and his people are going to do that. Draft Digest Pro. So we're trying to raise the game over at Draft Digest. So thank you, Chris, man. I appreciate you so much.
Yes, Brian. We're going to have you back on because we're going to get into more draft stuff. We're going to dive even more into the whole draft because there's some guys I want to talk to you about. But like I said, that's Bryce. Make sure to follow him. I'll put all the stuff in the description below and in the podcast descriptions and on YouTube and all that. So appreciate Bryce coming on. I'm Chris LeBron.